Yeah, we're live right now. So hey everybody, I want to thank you so much for tuning in again to another edition of WORBLI Talks Live. Today I'm really excited because we have one of our favorites here who is Didier Martin, who is from Transledger and going to be working on some really cool aspects of WORBLI and IBC and some really neat applications on the WORBLI chain, which we're going to dig into a little bit. I'm not going to go on too much. I'm going to pass it over to Domenic, who's going to kind of start with a quick update, and then we're going to go and we're going to chat with Didier and find out what's coming down the line from Transledger. So thanks so much everybody for being here. I'll hand it off to Domenic.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, we're excited. Thank you so much, Didier, for coming on tonight, just to give everybody a little update about what you guys have been working on and what we've been working on together for, oh boy, a while now. It takes a while to build quality stuff, doesn't it? Some good new tech coming though, and I think it's all going to be worth it. So the big thing for us internally from a technical perspective has been this new portal. We're originally going to release with just the desktop experience ready to go. That was ready about a week ago, but we didn't want to do staggered. So many people are on mobile these days, and the new UX is pretty much designed with that in mind, understanding that most people will be likely connecting through a mobile device. So we're doing testing with the mobile versions. You know, there's just so many different phones and platforms. With desktop, you've got Windows and Mac for the most part. Test Linux a little bit, but bulk of your users are there. But mobile, there's just so many different phones that people are on. So we're trying our best to test as many different devices and just make sure looks good and it flows properly and works properly. But we definitely expect to have that rolled out before the end of the month, if not another couple weeks. Still doing a ton of compliance work. We've nailed down details for the kind of final corporate AML KYC and business accounts. And the hitch with that was around the child accounts, right? There has to be a trail, and we know businesses are going to need multiple accounts. They'll have their main account, but they'll probably want accounts to collect payments. They might want accounts for different departments within the business potentially, maybe allocating tokens appropriately. They may want an account that they're going to use just for their staking, right? That's not going to be liquid. So we obviously want to make sure that businesses have all the tools they need. The cool thing is that the process for that pretty much gives us the skeleton for users to have some multiple accounts. Same thing, right? Users might want a staking account. As apps start to go online, we of course expect to have people who are pretty heavy duty traders and brokers and financial folks who will probably want a trading account. And so we're working on that process. It'll be limited. You're not going to be able to make unlimited child accounts as a business or as a user, just because again, people could potentially create a sort of web-like account environments, which, if someone really wanted to dig in on a chain like WORBLI, they'd be able to kind of trace the money. But we don't want to allow that to get so difficult that it requires sort of blockchain forensics to trace transactions, right? WORBLI is a chain where as long as you're doing the right things and minding your own business, no one's going to have any idea what you got going on. You'll still have your privacy, your anonymity, and we don't track any of that stuff. And so we have to kind of primarily rely on the compliance infrastructure to sort of keep things in place. And that's why we're creating these parameters, because that really will allow for that. It's a tough balance. We could, monitor everyone and everything, and people would give up a lot of privacy in doing so. Or we can kind of create some checks and balances, what might limit a little bit of functionality, but the trade-off is that it preserves a hell of a lot more freedom and privacy. And so we very consistently lean in that direction. Let's preserve people's freedom and privacy. The other side of it is that once governance gets rolled out and there's the ability for stakeholders to kind of vote and have influence, we kind of want to leave as much on the table for that as we can, and let people, let the stakeholders make those decisions down the road. And compliance is much like anything in that we don't want to limit features ahead of time. We want the system to be able to adapt to the use cases. Because in financial compliance, I mean, you could go down a rabbit hole, and if you want to accommodate for every single possible use case, the rule book's going to be, 10 miles thick. And there's no reason to do that. We can always kind of adapt the system to apps that come online or, use cases that emerge. And we feel that's a much better approach, but there is a kind of a base level compliance that needs to be in place. And we feel pretty comfortable that that's ready to go. If an app were to go live tomorrow, we'd feel pretty confident that the bulk of it's in place for them to operate safely and in a compliant manner. And so what's really left is the infrastructure stuff, and that's coming along well too. The resource model, as people who have been following the project are aware, will be housed by UtilityX. I'm hearing that there's been great progress there. Some recent updates to the EOSIO code base, especially coming out in version 1.8, are going to help us quite a bit. So that's been nice, because the thing for us again was we could have built the resource model from scratch, but it would have required altering some of the core code, and we really want to track the main EOS software as best we can, because once we start getting too deep into altering sort of system contracts and core parts of the code base, now we've got to maintain that with every single update, and that would get expensive and difficult quickly. So we're trying everything we can to avoid doing that. And Block One's quite cool with the way that they work with the code base for all chains, and they really do try to accommodate that. So that's been great and really helpful. We'll have some of our apps coming up this month. It's looking like we did a real push last month to try to get there and get something live. Weren't able to accomplish that, but it did help us push a lot of things along. We've got a lot of leads right now. I'd say we're actively talking to 8 different apps in various stages of kind of development. Some are pretty well ready, and we just need to finalize some deals. Others need a little bit of work, but are quite promising and really fulfill a kind of a core need. And I suppose that's the other thing that someone was reminding me we probably haven't talked enough about, is that people are used to EOS mainnet or other chains where they're just apps going live whenever they're ready, and it's a bit of a free-for-all. And it's not so much that we're restricting at a very high level because we only want a certain thing. There's definitely a quality control and compliance and security that comes into play, but it's also about laying the proper infrastructure at first, because apps aren't going to be able to operate well without this stuff. Things like payments, the IBC technology, the Transledger's bringing, we really need to kind of get that in place and in play, because there's other stuff that's built on that, including, as I'm sure Didier is going to explain, a lot of their technology is built fundamentally on that. I know they've been working on that implementation for us to make that technology available. But the resource model and stuff with UtilityX, again, when apps go live, they're going to want to be able to stake and reap those rewards, right? The economics have to work. Our economy is really based on this model. And so it's a lot more work on the front end to get things set up. But from that point, we know that there's a lot of tools, a lot of features, a few we haven't spoken about yet at all that are almost done. Basically, we haven't talked about too much because we took this stance about 6 to 8 weeks ago that we didn't want to talk about things till they were done, because it creates expectations and it makes it difficult for everyone involved to kind of live up to those expectations if there's delays, things like that. And we certainly don't want that kind of thing going on internally and externally, combined with the fact that a lot of the stuff we're bringing once it's live will be, copyable eventually, and we don't want to lose that first mover advantage. We've put a lot of work in, and much of this stuff in blockchain is about blazing that first trail, and then afterwards, it isn't too hard to copy. we think we've got a lot more than that. It's not like people will be able to clone WORBLI the next day or anything after certain things go live, but we want to benefit from that as much as possible. And we want the people working hard on this stuff to benefit from it as much as possible. But the other side of it is that, again, there's so many financial apps that need things like payment gateways, right? There's so many apps that are going to want the crypto fiat conversion that is coming with Transledger's platform. There's lots of apps that are going to want to build security tokens, right? And so we kind of had to get, it was a lot more difficult to get it down this first round with Tokenoro, but now we know that process, fairly simple. And we're actually bringing in some other technology that's going to make it even easier for the next group of people who want to launch a security token. So I really do expect that once we get these first 4 or 5 real anchor applications live and working, that it's going to be far easier for teams that have ideas for financially innovative products to bring them in and to go live fairly quickly. Because the other thing is that they won't have to build all of these pieces individually, which is what most of them do now, right? For any of you who've used a financial app, it's like they all have their own payment system, it seems like, that they've created. I mean, there's some vendors out there that some people use consistently, but it makes it a lot more challenging. Whereas when they're kind of built into the network and the blockchain, it should make things flow a lot faster. And also, I think, spur ideas. I think when people kind of see all this and see what's available, they're going to go, wow, I wasn't really thinking about building in that because it was so much work. But now that I see that these 3 or 4 pieces are in, I can just kind of bring my innovation and rely on these other keystone pieces for the rest of the application. It's just going to be API integrations, UX, and I'm done, right? And that will really, I think, help us start to get some really quality apps moving fast. And there's some other bigger deals in the work with some pretty large projects out there in the space that we're just, again, finalizing and figuring out how to bring the WORBLI integration in. Things are already live and working on mainnet or other chains. So we've got some Ethereum kind of refugees that have come our way recently that we're working with a few of those projects. And we also have a lot of really exciting stuff coming for games that we haven't talked about at all. There's going to be some really, really neat features that are going to make building a game on WORBLI be, in our opinion, a no-brainer. So a lot of groundwork, not super exciting updates at this stage, but I anticipate that, in the next few updates, they're going to get progressively more exciting. Governance, wanted to just one more kind of little blurb on that. Our governance team is working weekly now, starting to lay the framework of what we expect the governance to look like, starting to tackle some early things, take a look at different types of voting and how they might apply in different areas. We're very unlikely to have a one-size-fits-all approach to anything. And we're trying to take a very, very pragmatic, efficiency sort of, say, pro-business, although that can be a loaded question in places like the US, but think of that in the realest sense of the word, meaning, rules that are nonpartisan, rules that are as unbiased as possible, that just work the best and the most efficiently. And we benefit so much from seeing some of the lessons of mainnet and what's worked there and what hasn't. And although we've got a bit of a different animal on our hands with WORBLI, it still does help inform us as to voter behavior and what's been challenging and what hasn't. It allows us to kind of skip some of those steps, learn from some of those mistakes. And so things like, rolling voting and voter fatigue, we're really trying to target that there's not going to be a lot of times that you vote, but when you do, they're going to be important. And so that way it's like voting day and you'll vote on 3 or 4 really important things. You'll get a lot of updates about it. Will be completely in your face. You'll know when it's happening, much like everybody in the US knows that, in November, you're going to be voting in some big elections. We kind of want the same thing in WORBLI, that eventually there's a time of year that's really critical and then probably a midterm vote. But then what we do expect to have sprinkled in is, we'll say, a kind of a initiatives vote. And we've been working and talking about this a lot, which is 1, at any given time, the ability for a certain number of stakeholders to come together and say, hey, we've got a bad actor, we need to act quickly, and we can put in a referendum, right? And then referendums for other changes, like, hey, we really noticed that this part of the system is broken. We don't want to wait 6 months or 8 months or whenever the next vote is, as long as we get enough kind of sign off from a reasonable percentage of the community or representation of the community, bam, we can bring it to a vote and we can have a sort of a special vote. Or maybe there's something new and amazing and everybody from the community is just really overwhelmed and saying, well, God, let's bring this in, let's get this going, or let's fund this, maybe there's some new technology that emerges and it's a pretty big update. It's not something that the foundation team can just, throw resources at and get done, but the community says, hey, we really want this. What if we put forth a vote to get some funding together and make this happen? And so it's a mix of that, just to give a little preview. And we're hoping that in these upcoming WORBLI Talks, we're going to start having a bit of a governance corner and bringing on at least someone from the little governance think tank that we have right now. I think it's about 7 of us on this team, and it's a really good representation of people from the WORBLI community who we felt like were some of the real world-class experts in governance. And we very specifically, this was Toto and I did a lot of the recruiting because we had been around EOS governance so much. They're dissenting. It's not 5 or 6 people where if you followed them in the early EOS Telegram channels, you'd be like, oh yeah, those guys all they're all kind of flying this flag. I mean, this group of people have gone head to head intelligently, respectfully, numerous times. And we wanted that. I invited that on purpose. I didn't want there to be an ideology that you could slap on this group and say, okay, these guys are all X, these guys and girls are, all represent this sort of line of thinking. They're very diverse, intellectually, culturally, across the board, but I'd also say they're all extremely well respected. And the number one thing is that they're super, super ethical. You can't you can't buy these votes. I can tell you right now. You really can't. They're really, really high ethic people. And that's what we wanted first and foremost is a system that's fair and reliable and trustworthy in the end. So that's what I have. I'll let you guys take it from here.
Sounds good. There's a couple of things you mentioned that I'm really excited about. You mentioned you guys are working on pushing the mobile portal, which is going to end up ultimately in the long game, creating a lot of access, which kind of leads back to some of the things that we've talked about, whereas a lot of the world doesn't necessarily have a desktop, but they do have maybe an iPhone 5 or an iPhone 4. So I think for me, that's a really exciting thing to see you guys working away on that coming up. We've got a lot of people who are laughing at your comments of the ETH refugees. And just as a quick follow-up, before we dive into some of the stuff that Didier is doing, I know for a fact that the team has talked to some really high-level applications on Ethereum that would surprise a lot of people. I also know that there's a lot of those applications which are sitting back and kind of watching right now. What's the general reception that you guys are getting when you're out there and you're speaking and you're chatting to people like, hey, listen, we have this system, it's running on the fastest software by far. What do you guys think? Like, what are people thinking? What's the reaction you're getting back?
Yeah, I mean, the transaction speeds obviously get some headlines. I think though what's standing out to these folks more than anything is the way in which we can bring in compliance that, again, much like a public mainnet can't do, a public Ethereum can't do. It's all app layer, and app layer only gets you so far. And so that's really what's exciting to them. A lot of them have found workarounds with the transaction speeds. Frankly, a lot of stuff doesn't happen on chain, and then they just report to the chain, which, maybe for a DEX or something, as Didier can tell you, is not great. But for a standard fintech app, say a payment processor, it's no big deal if they just batch all the transactions, every hour or something, and have one sort of report to the blockchain to log, right, the transaction history or something. That's not going to necessarily slow them down too much, but it's the compliance layer that's really compelling to them, where they're they're hearing like, what? Like, all this stuff will be taken care of and we won't have to really deal with any of that. Like, yeah, it's, it's all there. Like, as your users on board, there'll be AML KYC. And they're like, you're covering that? Because they're all doing it, sure, at the app layer, but they're paying, right? Every app is paying for that. It's not happening for free. And so that's the part that we get the best reception from. And then for those that are security minded, trying to write stuff, that's all Solidity based as opposed to EOS, which is very much the kind of enterprise standard, right? It's C++ code. It's, WASM and these other languages that are just very much a computer programmer's wheelhouse when it comes to building finance. So those are the big ones.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. I'm personally really excited for what the future holds. I'm not seeing you guys. For some reason, it's dropped your image, but as long as you guys can hear me okay and Didier can still speak okay, then I think maybe we can start talking about some of the stuff that's happening on with Transledger. Didier, I was speaking a little bit. We've also spoken a little bit during the pre-talk, and essentially kind of, the applications that you're building on WORBLI, this is something that Domenic's been really, really passionate about. And it's something that I'm really passionate about as well, because there's a lot of abuse going on out there. I mean, people go onto an exchange thinking that they're provided this opportunity to buy or purchase. But there's like a lot of wash trading. There's a lot of people who are using them as liquidity to be able to do arbitrage. There's a lot of like really, really seedy things going on. And I know a lot of the applications that you're bringing to WORBLI are really kind of innovative in the sense that they're going to circumvent a lot of this. So I guess without further ado, why don't you kind of tell us what you've been working on in whatever order you see fit, and how some of these things are really going to benefit holders within WORBLI and kind of EOSIO in general?
Yes. In fact, in the last weeks, we were doing a lot of intense testing, and we're still doing that, which requires quite a lot of work. Maybe I can do a shared screen, because an image worth 1,000 words. No, that's sure even how I can share options, I guess. No, it's not there. Do you know where is the button or the option?
So if you click over top of your picture, you should see something that when you hover over it, it says share screen.
See that? Oh yeah, share screen. Okay, got it.
You got it.
Yeah, got it. And share application window. That one, go back. Where is it? Application window. If I take that one, share, and then, do you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So I'll start from the beginning now, so that way it will be a lot easier. So everything now that we do will be integrated into a dashboard. So you get in, I say my password and user ID, so it's easier to get there, and you'll be able to subscribe. So it's a membership system. And what we are working in the following weeks is to work with Rob in order to sync our own KYC and WORBLI KYC. Because, as you know, that system works also on other platforms like Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Ripple, Stellar. So we need now to integrate both KYCs, mean to have a reciprocal link. So when you look at it, this is the intro page, but for the moment, that page will change very often. That's where we used to start our test different programs, and also you have them here in the menu. What we are working these days is that we saw that actually we got a big list of annoying things that we noticed. There's a lot in the blockchain realm, as you can imagine, but there are also some annoying things that you find usually, like, for example, the need to re-sign in for every, or to redo to enter again and again the information you entered previously, stuff like that, which are very annoying from the user experience. So what we are working these days is to have a single login for all the different services. So when you log once, you can have access to all the services that you see right now. So you have different ones, like I'll take the first one, which is to digitize the currencies, the fiat currency. So what we're working these days are the Canadian dollar. It's on a good track. We have the FinTrack registration done in Canada. What we are waiting now is for the license in Quebec, because it's a different system. So we need to have this license. So as soon as we have both, people will be able to buy digitized CAD, DCAD, in fact. And exactly like you have the digitized USDs, actually, from Paxos, TrustUSD, Gemini, Circle, Stronghold, like these guys.
Yeah.
So
is KYC going to be mandatory as part of that in order to be able to? Yes.
It has to be because of the FinTrack registration, and that will be the same for Europe also.
Makes sense.
For everywhere, in fact, because in Europe, like I'll show you that in the euro, for example, when we'll digitize the euro, we need in that case a e-money license. In order to be able to digitize the euro, and they have a license for that, something that is inexistent in the USA and inexistent in Canada and Australia, to have this notion of digitizing the national currencies or the regional currency.
Of course.
But they have that in Europe. So every time they ask you to provide AML reports, and this is the very same requirement for the e-money, for the money transporters in the US. So Paxos, TrustUSD, all these guys, they are money transporters, and obviously you need to have the license, and with that, you have the obligation to be KYC and AML compliant.
Of course.
So
that's a great answer. That'll utilize the WORBLI KYC then to be able to transact.
Yes. This is we'll start to work on that with Rob in order to have a two-way information transfer between our KYC, our membership system, and the membership system of the WORBLI. So to integrate both. So that way you don't need to re-enter the information. If you're already KYC'd by WORBLI, then you are KYC'd automatically on the Transledger and vice versa. This is the goal we want to reach. Again, to make the user experience a lot easier, and not having to redo every time the very same thing. So we're targeting all these different currencies to be digitized. Canadian and Australian are the easiest because they're very, very similar, same kind of registration in both cases. Europe, more complex. And the British pound, we don't know. That's we'll have to wait. And even people living in UK don't know. It depends a lot on the Brexit, if it happens or not, or in which condition it will happen. So, quite complex in that case. We don't know. So this is for this service. We have also that service, which is the crypto exchange.
Nice.
That technology will be used for different things.
In what sense?
In the sense that you'll be able to trade pure tokens, like utility tokens, for example, or pure tokens, security tokens, but security tokens attached to a real, like a share, for example, attached to a share. in that case. It means that you may have a lookup period attached to that share, especially if it's a private company. If it's a public company, then there are all the requirements like having a public report, a public financial report, broadcasted or published to the SEC, for example, in the case of the US. And also for non-fungible items, like a share is non-fungible, or derivatives based on real contracts, not derivatives that like we find in the blockchain realm. They're not really derivatives, they are games. From the financial point of view, a derivative is attached to a contract, a real thing. So it can be an option. You have an option to buy something in the future. You may exert it. I mean, you can realize it or not. Or the other derivative that we have usually is a future. So you buy at a price today for 6 months down the road, and you expect that the price will be higher than now. So that's why you try to hedge your position by having a contract. But in both cases, a good is delivered at the end of the contract, which isn't the case with what people call derivatives on the different blockchains, which are really like a bet. It's only that, it's a bet disguised into something with a nice name, but it's a bet.
Yeah, of course.
It's a game, like playing dice or whatever. It's exactly like.
Have these tools been pulled off on other networks before, or is this kind of the first time that we're seeing this in blockchain?
No, it's the first time. We don't have real, and this is something we're working right now with Darren, to have a real derivative market that could be used in that case for public companies. If finally, in some jurisdictions, it may be possible that the legislators will agree to have, based on certain conditions, of course, like the contract. So they'll need to approve the contract that will encode a public share in that case. But when that will be the case, the future and options based on the real thing will be possible. We're thinking also about the future for different things like rice or products like that, where you can hedge the price. People can buy it for the price today, but let's say you have rain or whatever, or bad weather, and you have less rice harvesting than it is supposed to be. So the price gets higher, but because you have your future, you will pay the price that you got 6 months before. We see that several countries, like in Asia, like Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, these countries or South America, they don't have a very well-structured commodity market. So that will be another dimension. So you get the old, and obviously Forex, the Forex market, the way for people to decide, and I will repeat it because it's quite important, the way for the people to decide what is the exchange rate, not the banks. If you have an importer, let's say in UK, and you have another guy in the US, those guys, they are importing or exporting. So it means that, let's say, a guy in the US wants to export something in UK, for example. And then, or let's say import, let's make it simpler. A guy in the US wants to buy Jaguar in the UK. So he will need British pounds to buy a lot of Jaguar in the UK, because the USD, in fact, it's not the local currency of the UK, that's the pound. So what will happen is that this guy will say, I'm interested to provide a bid. I am bidding to get these pounds for that amount in USD. And then you'll have another guy who will say, okay, I have USDs. Your price seems to be interesting. Okay, I'll sell you my pounds for that amount of USD. This is exactly what banks are doing. And this is where the exchange rate, the actual exchange rate, is determined, but not the end users. Banks are deciding what is the exchange rate. In that case, where you have that product, I mean, the exchange, based on forex pairs like USD and pound, then you have an open market where people can decide what is their own version of the exchange rate. That's a huge impact, in fact, because it means that now we decentralize international exchanges. And obviously, after that, the payment system, where that could be automated. We also created two different kinds of interfaces. Now what you see is the order book.
Yep.
But we created was something else that we call the Cambio. You will recognize that this interface resembles a lot what you have at Shapeshift or Changelly.
Yeah, of course.
In fact, it's a different interface to the very same order book, except that it will be market instead of limit. So you'll pick the price at the top of the stack.
Okay. Is that beneficial? Is it beneficial in any way, or is that?
Yeah. In fact, when you use the Cambio, that you'll see, big bunch here. You'll see top of the stack, the two stack here, the sell or the buy. And then depending on the side where you are, let's say you want to buy, you have Bitcoins and you want to buy to get Litecoins, for example, then the stack, that will be that stack, for example, will take the top of the stack. So it will be at that price. That will be market. This is basically what Changelly and Shapeshift are doing, except that you'll see that transaction, that market transaction, appear here in the market. So it will be more transparent than Changelly or Shapeshift. Also, because it's a DEX, and because we need speed, this is so all the transactions, all the orders will be on chain.
Yeah.
So everybody will be able to see if a transaction is honest or not, or well conducted or not.
Yeah. Just to break it down to people, why is this I know why this is important. Like the exchanges, not all of them, of course, but a lot of them we're getting screwed with their transactions, right?
Yeah, because it's a software external. They can do whatever they want to do. They can tell whatever they want to tell because there's no transparency. But if the matching engine is off-chain, because it has to, because it needs to be efficient and speedy. But if all the orders are on-chain, and if you have a contract that will do the resolution of the transaction, and I'll explain that further on with slides and in a video so that people can understand. And in fact, the only guys who really did a DEX are the guys from 0x on Ethereum. If you're using 0x, in that case, you have a real DEX because it's fully transparent. So basically, it takes the same approach, but a lot simpler. We checked everything that we found annoying from the API point of view, and then we tried to not repeat the same mistake.
So right now you're talking about an exchange that is ethical. It's a lot more fair. It's a lot more transparent. So you're not just being used as liquidity pigs so that the exchanges can fill their pockets. We're talking about instant access to digitized money, which is approved and accredited, and then access to a lot of trading tools that we haven't really seen before in blockchain, like stocks, equities, and some really interesting tools to be able to trade them all. So it sounds amazing.
For us, it's basically the same tool, except for derivative, where the matching engine is a little bit different. but basically it's the very same software. It's the software we develop is very versatile and very fast also. So that way, we can adapt it to these different kind of contracts, basically.
For sure.
And we have the payment system, which is this, that will be used. That's my debugger.
It's important.
Yeah, I was trying something, and then I did this thing, just to see what's happening. But basically, you'll be able that the gizmo will be replaced by the token Oro. So gizmo is our test token, actually. Okay. And then you have these different source of cash or source of value. So Bitcoin become cash, Litecoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Stellar, EOS, and now PayPal and credit card and debit card. But we'll check if, in the case of token Oro, that will be used, but most likely PayPal, because of 450 million people have a PayPal account. They may use it or not, but that's quite a lot of people. So it's already included. It's already developed and implemented.
So you guys are integrating all this with PayPal as well?
Yeah.
That creates a tremendous amount of access for entrepreneurs and people who are looking to use digital assets in the way that they transact and the way that they kind of receive payments. That's huge. That's massive. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, so this is something we developed in the last 2 weeks, basically to connect to, and in some cases you have some interesting gadgets, like for example, people who wants to pay with Ethereum. Yeah. See, they have the pay with MetaMask button, so they'll be able to pay with MetaMask. For the other guys, it's different. PayPal, they'll have the PayPal button. I won't do that because I will go into the PayPal sign in. So it will be a nightmare to get out after. Credit card and debit card. I don't know if he'll do it. No, I'll try. Yes, got it. This will be based on the W3C web payment. So you can add your own, your MasterCard, Visa card, and everything there. We don't know. We don't know if then in the case of the Oro they'll use it. But if there is a merchant having a merchant ID, then they can use it as a payment the same way. And again, people using the W3C web payment, encrypting your information about your cards. And in fact, it's a 1024 bits encryption. Made very tough to crack because it has to be PCI compliant, PCI DSS compliant. So it has to be highly secured. And actually, the banks are examining the web payment API to be sure that it is really, really secure, because they want to put PSD2, which is a direct access to banks in Europe, on that. Yeah. And the French, they have also their own interface, which is instant transfer of funds between banks. So this guy's also working on it. So it means that people can enter their transaction, and they will need, unless somebody can steal you the 3-digit that you have at the back of the card, they won't be able to do a transaction or complete a transaction.
So just to back up here, did you say instant bank to bank?
Yes, in France, they very recently came out with that. Yes, exactly. Wow. So it's really instantaneous.
It's game changing.
Yeah, and Germany is working for the same kind of thing. As soon as you have France and Germany in Europe doing that, I expect that all the other guys in Europe will do that.
Yeah, I would expect.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool thing. No, in fact, if you look at where Europe stands actually on the banks, they're way, way, way beyond what we see in North America, and that includes Canada and the US.
Yeah. Yep.
They're so advanced compared to what we have in North America. And there is a big gap actually increasing every year because they have now a PSD2 interface, which is a directive requiring for all banks to provide an interface to have access to the accounts. So no longer having strictly an access through the UI, but you can build an application using an API, which provide you service. So you can add value to what the bank provides. And this is what we'll leverage with that thing, you just saw.
I think a lot of people in the comments are getting pretty excited here as they start to realize kind of what exactly you've put together. This is pretty incredible, Didier. This is stuff that we've been needing for full-scale crypto adoption, and we haven't seen anything done at this scale and this speed or anywhere near this ever before. I know.
But there's also another surprise.
and next.
That one. The make payment. We tested that today. We still need to do an improvement on that, but I'll show you. In fact, it will be, let's say I want to do an EOS network payment. Instead of entering this, for example, this is easy. This is human readable thing.
Yeah.
But now let's do an Ethereum transaction. Let's say I want to change this. Now I'll show you what I need. And I don't care, that you see that because it's on testnet. So it's funny money. And I'll do that. I'll copy my address and then you'll see what I mean by something made for extraterrestrial people, not for humans. I cannot remember that string.
Of course.
So instead of using that, if I want to send, I will use that.
Just email. You can just send emails, digitized.
Exactly, just in here.
Wow.
And that will be, of course, for all the members. You need a membership before that. So a WORBLI, or if you have a WORBLI membership, you have a Transledger membership and vice versa. And this is something also we'll need to continue working with Rob in order that if somebody outside the WORBLI ecosystem sign up to our system, then we create automatically a WORBLI account at the same time. And then so that way we can share the KYC. And speaking of that,
yes,
we have a new structure. The structure is based on franchisee, users, merchant, and users. A franchisee is somebody having that kind of interface because we have two different kinds of users. We have users, what you see now is a franchisee or a merchant, not a merchant, but or an admin, I mean the Uber admin, because they can see the members. So in that case, you see all the Transledger members. Then, if I change the user, and I'll do that the hard way, I'll go in the database directly to change it, just to show you. That one. And I say, now it's user. Obviously, the interface is different. Oops. Stay the same. Yeah, I guess the problem that I am having, I think, is a problem of cache. So you see, real life debugging.
Yeah. Well, that's why you do the debugging, and that's why you do the testing. And obviously, like, this must take a lot of rigorous testing, I'm guessing, because a lot of the stuff that you've done we haven't even come close to doing a lot of this stuff on blockchain before. So I'm assuming that.
Yeah, it's very tough to do because you're right. It's so new. that we have a lot of working parts to test. And also we have a big emphasis on the security.
Of course.
So that's why it's so hard, because now it doesn't want to test it.
So Roger says, Didier, are you sure you want to deliver all that much at once? That seems to a next year thing. Too many features, and he's smiling, he's happy. It sounds like everybody's really excited about it. And I Smith, who I think is Ian, says if you want to use my account, it works fine. So if you decided you wanted to send him some BTC or some EOSIO,
yeah, I'll do that because I noticed that we have a new member. So we'll play with you.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll send you some funny BTC or LTC.
It's some really, really incredible updates. What are the implications have for some of the businesses? Like what ultimately can businesses and people coming to Worbli going to be able to do that they couldn't previously do before with some of this technology? Like what are we talking about for your average user? What are we talking about for a merchant?
Yeah, merchants and franchisee. I guess this is quite new. We came to the notion of franchisee means, let's say, for example, Tim, or Tribe in that case. You have obviously a membership. You can decide, the level of membership, if it is full KYC, no KYC, depending, and it gives different rights and roles. But it means that the dashboard that you saw will be branded either with Tim branding or Tribe branding or whatever. And then your members will inherit the feature that I just showed you. Because any member from any franchisee is in a big pool. Obviously, each franchisee see only their members, but the capacity to send from a member on another franchise or another system through the email address, it works because it's a different system. It's a system like the DNS system, an addressing scheme that we have. We created a new address scheme in order to create the IBC system. So you have your ID, colon, the network ID, and the currency ID, the token ID, basically. And so that way we can route these things across the different blockchains, and we can route also the transactions that way. So so that's why you can transfer to another guy a Bitcoin or Litecoin or something that, wasn't possible before.
Instant access, high liquidity, above and beyond any liquidity previously available on any other exchanges. Instant access through fiat, PayPal, or whatever other option that you guys dream up in the meantime. Like, it's a game changer. Everybody's going to want this. It was funny. You kind of mentioned something about Tribe and Tim. Joe's there right now. So, I won't get too far into that, but you can definitely expect Tribe to be doing some integrations with Worbli, and ultimately that'll lead to having a little bit of Transledger on there as well. I'm honestly, like, Didier, I did know quite a bit about what you're doing. I now know a lot about what you're doing. It's incredibly exciting. What does this allow? We kind of spoke before a little bit about the fact that this is like, it's good to have this on EOS because there are no transaction fees, which is a benefit, which reduces a lot of friction. The amount of time reduces a lot of friction. But even right now, you're actually able to take on existing legacy systems like Visa, like MasterCard, like a lot of these traditional old systems, and be able to move money at higher liquidity around the world faster, settle transactions faster with higher security. Is that kind of what all this is ultimately amounting to in terms of some of the capability that blockchain is going to bring to existing technologies?
It's, in fact, we have to integrate four generation systems. I have the fiat system, which is the first generation. I should say, though, for that fiat system are more versatile than crypto because you can move a USD from bank to bank and it stays a USD. So, which is impossible for blockchains. If you have a Bitcoin, it worth a Bitcoin only on the Bitcoin network. I cannot move it on a different technology. Something I can do with fiat. I can have one bank having Oracle and the other bank having even a blockchain, and it stays $1. So
it does.
So that's why we had to integrate these 4 different generations. So fiat, first generation, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash. Second generation, Ethereum. And then the third one, which is the fourth one, I should say, in fact, which is EOS. And EOS evolving toward an addressing scheme that gets more and more user-friendly. But the problem is that if you look at the 10, in fact, if you look at the 7 currencies or cryptocurrencies we're supporting right now in the payment, this represents 85% of the total market cap.
Of course.
So it means a huge amount of money is trapped into these networks. This is the reality. And people have money trapped in these different. So this is why we included these networks as a payment system. What remains now, and this is why we had to also work on connections, because all these things have to be integrated together, so that way that people could have a merchant, for example, can have a direct translation into a conversion, I would say, into fiat money. So people would pay in Bitcoin, but in their own bank account, they will get USDs, for example.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's exciting. I think maybe what we'll do is, unfortunately, guys, Domenic had an emergency come up, so he had to dip out. So I know you guys did ask a lot of questions here that are related to WORBLI. I, of course, do know a lot about what's going on with WORBLI, but I prefer that I get you guys the answers to a lot of these questions straight out of the horse's mouth. So I don't want to sit here and blow smoke about anything that I don't have 100% certainty on. Another thing is I do know about certain things, and I'm not sure about how much information that I am going to be able to let out. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to probably not answer a lot of these questions, but what I will do is I will ask them to Domenic, and I'll put out maybe an article via Tribe or something like that to address these in the future. So I think that we'll move that way for right now. But what I am going to ask Didier is, because we do have you here, and we do have some questions that are related to TransLedger. I think we'll just focus on those for now, and then I'll put out a document just to answer any of the questions that Domenic might not have been able to answer. So I'm looking at a couple right now, and if you guys have questions, well, sorry guys, while you're listening, I added a bunch. Roger Sneaky, it's always out there. Roger. Anyway, so I'm going to start with some questions for you, Didier. Besides the IBC, will all TransLedger apps be running on WORBLI? So that's what Moss. There's been a lot of questions asked on how necessary is WORBLI for a lot of the actions that are kind of happening with Interledger. I think that's kind of, the question that a lot of people are asking. Is WORBLI needed, in essence, which is kind of seems to be something that's coming up. Is a separate KYC chain needed? Is it an asset? And how will they both work in tandem together?
Okay. Yes, the exchanges, they'll be on WORBLI.
Yeah.
This is why we're all working together with Guillaume and all the other guys from BlockRun to improve the speed in order that we have the fastest network. Let's say, actually, a DEX, you can't imagine doing fast trading on Ethereum. It's impossible. It's way too slow. So you are obliged to do centralized exchange, because in order to get the speed, let's say you want to get the traffic that Binance get, it's impossible to do that on Ethereum as a DEX. But if we have at least 15 transactions per second on WORBLI, yes, we can have the same level of traffic that Binance get, but as a DEX, with full transparency of every transaction.
Which is incredible in itself. I know that you're not going to be able to answer this, but people are wondering about a timeline, of course, for some of the stuff that's coming out on Interledger. Of course, we're not really, as I understand, we won't be commenting on that at this time. So I'm sorry to let you guys.
I can. We recently came out with something on that. In fact, for the IBC, we try to have it faster. What we are doing, though, is to have it air-gapped. So we are creating two different kind of transfer. One which is highly secure, and that will be an option people will be able to choose. But we start with that one because it's easier to do. And it doesn't require multi-signature on all the networks that I showed you. So in fact, what we'll do is that we'll have a transaction engine completely separated, not linked to the network. It will be only as exit. So that way it will be air gap. What I mean by that, the interledger network will collect the transfer request, which basically a document saying, I want to transfer that amount from this blockchain to this blockchain. This is the transfer request. So that network will broadcast the transfer request. That will be written in a file. And then maybe 2 times per day at the moment, we'll do a transfer to a completely separated system through a USB key or a removable hard disk.
Yeah.
And then we'll do the transactions. Later on, in a couple of weeks, maybe months, because it takes a lot of things to resolve before, like governance, who will sign, how will, all these things. And we discovered it's not only technical, it is a lot about humans. And but meanwhile, we'll be able to operate on a slower IBC, but highly more secure IBC, because people, the hackers won't be able to have access to the reserves. However, we'll have full transparency because we have the auditors, and something I'll explain later on, show you the interface that people will have on that, but they'll have full transparency on the source, destination, and the transfer request itself. And even if they are very, very agnostic, they can store or implement one of our auditors, on their own system and check every transactions that is going through the network.
It's amazing. So the ultimate system in transparency, speed, liquidity. What are you guys supporting?
Exactly. Yeah.
What are you guys supporting right now as we start out for ulterior blockchains? You're doing Bitcoin, Stellar, which is another one of my favorites actually. So we've got Bitcoin, Stellar, Bitcoin Cash, WORBLI Talks, Litecoin. What else?
So basically, the UTXO, we have Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin. That's for the first generation. Second generation, we have and Ripple, which is also a first generation and a half, I would say. And then we have Ethereum and Stellar as the second generation guys. EOS, WORBLI, as all these guys as utility tokens, and Telos also.
Yeah.
And what we want to achieve is a graph that we have internally, which is a triangle, where you can move these utility tokens like the Telos, the EOS, and the WORBLI. You can move them all around and have on the periphery, on the external, the Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, and all these guys. And it's bidirectional. So the idea of the exchange is that way. In order to be able to exchange high-value tokens as in the DEX, something you cannot do today, you need to bring them on a transaction platform, which will be WORBLI in that case.
Yeah.
And then you trade them with other guys. And when you want to get the full value of the token, the original one, like Bitcoin, Litecoin, you simply redeem them back to the original network. And then you have the full value of that token. So let's say you move 1 Bitcoin, you trade it with another guy. The other guy has half a Bitcoin, not you, the other guy. And the other guy can redeem it back to Bitcoin network and have his Bitcoin, half Bitcoin in that case.
Yeah. It's impressive. I love it. I really, really like it. And I'm going to make sure as well that I post everything below. huge projects, huge undertakings, and I was excited about WORBLI before, but after sitting down and talking to you a little bit, now I'm really excited. So I'm going to make sure that I list kind of your website. I'm going to make sure that I list, you guys do have a Telegram, and of course you're rebranded recently. So
yeah, it's still, we kept the same thing. It's Inter-Blockchain Lab.
Inter-blockchain.
Yeah, please get there to give us feedback, because we're working, and that's a slow process. We're working on the governance document for the management of the reserves. So it will be probably with things like, votes, like you have with the block producers, to be able to elect the signers, and what are the criteria we'll ask for the signers in order that they are honest. So, think with us on it. It will be a common design with the people participating to the discussion.
Yeah. So just in summation, for anybody who missed what exactly was talked about here, some really big things coming to WORBLI. Didier is doing some amazing work to make that all happen. Exchanges that aren't going to rip you off, steal your liquidity, the ability to transact in multiple different assets that have never really been seen before on blockchain. Instant liquidity from cash to PayPal to whatever crypto, and then whatever fiat. It's really, really big. It's really, really exciting. Didier, I know how busy you are, man, and I really appreciate you taking a little bit of time to share this with me and share this with everybody else tonight, because it sounds like it's going to be an absolute beast of a system, and not just a beast of a system, but a more fair system where maybe we can kind of eliminate a lot of the abuse that's happening in a lot of exchanges right now. And if people don't understand some of the things that are going on with exchanges, I encourage you to look it up. Having something that's completely transparent in this way takes you out of a lot of trouble, because a lot of the time, a lot of these exchanges, some of the tactics that they use to extract money from their own customers are absolutely deplorable. And this really kind of ends that. So it's been a pleasure. Guys, once again, I answered any questions that you had about IBC. Domenic had to slip out because such is life, and that happens sometimes. So in fairness to you guys, I'm going to take the questions that you listed there. I'm going to make sure that I write up a little bit of a document. I'll get Domenic to answer those, and I'll post those in a tribe a little bit later on. So big things coming for WORBLI. I'm excited, Didier. I hope that we can sit down and do this again, man. And honestly, guys, go get in touch. Very humble, very nice human, doing some massive things. Thank you guys all so much for sitting down and watching again. We really appreciate you. We appreciate the community, and buckle up. It's going to be a pretty interesting few months.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Thanks, Didier. Pleasure as always. Thanks, everybody. Okay. We'll see you soon, guys. Bye.